Listen, I know, I'm a little bit late to the party here, but I did say that when the next DLC comes out for Back 4 Blood, I would make a video talking about it. I never said I would do it on time. But anyways, how's it going everybody, and welcome to Children of the Worm, the second DLC released for Back 4 Blood on August 30th of this year. So yeah, I'm a bit behind, but you know, better late than never. This DLC features a brand new act with 6 levels, a new cleaner, some new enemies and weapons, as well as some new cards to spice up your deck. Now, in my previous video when I talked about Tunnels of Terror, I made a comment towards the end where I think Turtle Rock is taking Back 4 Blood in the right direction, but they're taking very small steps. So in this video, not only do I want to talk about the DLC, do I think they are going in the right direction? And my answer is... Look, it's not a bad DLC in any way, but obviously it has problems. It's not a perfect DLC in any way, shape, or form. But there are things in Children of the Worm that I do actually enjoy, and maybe we'll get some more of this in the future with more DLCs and content. But let's start with the main course of the DLC, and that is the brand new Act 5. This features 6 levels with the whole premise of going to an island and saving Prophet Dan's followers, or what he calls flock. The first level is actually not on the island, but in order to get to the island, we have to find a boat. Once the boat is found, then our job is to find different parts to put the boat back together and take it out to sea. If you are not a fan of the missions like Special Delivery and T5, where you have to find boxes and take it to a checkpoint while being constantly swarmed with Ridden, then this level is going to drive you nuts. In fact, I would make the argument that Turtle Rock somehow managed to make this worse than those 2 missions I just mentioned. A good amount of parts have to be found, and they can spawn in a handful of locations. Now, the game does tell you the general area of where the parts are, such as a restaurant or this garage on a hill. However, the specific location of where these parts are is not mentioned, and you'll have to look up and down in every nook and cranny to find the parts. And on top of all of that, Ridden are constantly spawning just to make matters worse, and your only way of defending yourself is a knife. Awesome. Love that. And I know I could just drop the parts, shoot, and then pick them back up, but still, that doesn't change how I feel about these kind of missions, and the fact that this is literally the first mission of Act 5, it's really not a good start. When all the parts are found, there's about 30 seconds of defending the boat, and you are given access to a machine gun that you can literally just hold for the entire 30-second duration, and then the first level ends. So yeah, kind of off to a rocky start, but again, we still do have 5 levels ahead of us, so I'll let it pass for now. In level 2, you arrive on the island and immediately get greeted by a whole line of snipers on rooftops. Yes, there are snipers now, and I'll talk about them more in a bit. The whole goal of this mission is to make it to the prison and rescue Prophet Dan's followers, like I mentioned before. And this level also introduces the rest of the new enemies that are added to the game. And while yes, you can get them in the first level as well as the other acts through corruption cards, level 2 is where they really shine, and it's honestly a really nice introduction. In fact, this level in general serves as a better introduction to the new act than the first level did. Just a matter of making it from point A to point B without having to do any tedious tasks. When you finally get to the safe room door, it has to be blown up, and then you are greeted by the new enemies, and honestly, I think it's great.
That's not what I wanted to see.
I would rather have this be the first level than the first level we actually got. Level 3, you are now in the prison with the objective of freeing the followers, and I gotta say, this is probably my favorite mission in the entire act. The prison is a bit claustrophobic, but it's not too cramped where there is no wiggle room. The creepy abandoned prison atmosphere on top of all the little rituals and markings on the wall, I just think is a fantastic touch. And rescuing the prisoners is only a part of this whole mission. After they are released, you make your escape only to be dropped down into a room where there is an ogre. And the first time playing through this, I was absolutely terrified. I did not expect this whatsoever. And then I found out that you could just look through the window up top and see him before you drop down, but regardless, I thought this was a pretty fun surprise. After taking down the ogre and leaving the prison, you end up in another arena, and the Mother of Worms, I guess, traps you in and prepares you for what seems like a gladiator-styled fight with what seems to be an endless horde of Ridden and specials. Then out of nowhere, this guy named Derek opens the floor, you jump through, and the mission is complete. Like seriously, if the later missions in Act 5 are as good as this one, we're definitely in for a ride. And this brings us to the 4th level, which is not only the worst mission in the entire act, but it's probably one of the worst missions in the entire game. The whole sequence consists of escorting a minecart with dynamite to the other side of the mines to blow up a path and escape. And again, Turtle Rock managed to screw this very simple thing up. First off, the cart can be completely turned off and stopped by Common Ridden. Like, their little bare hands could just stop a huge metal cart. Like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Secondly, throughout the level, there are moments where you have to open some gates, while other gates the cart can just politely open.
Just gently opens the next set of doors.
And third, some areas have tracks missing, and you have to rebuild the tracks with the same exact materials that you used in the previous acts to block windows. Like, goddamn, dude, this pile of material is very versatile. And you also know that this whole thing is BS when one of the cleaners makes a comment about it.
Whoever built this bridge did a real shoddy job. Now I gotta go all the way around. Ugh, this is such bullshit.
And don't get me wrong, the mines visually look really stunning. In fact, I really enjoy the whole aesthetic of this act. But an entire escort mission with very repetitive and tedious tasks is not fun, and it's quite annoying. Once the cart makes it to the end, it creates an explosion that's the equivalent to a birthday candle. Then you reach the safe room and complete the level. God, I hate this one. This one is so bad. The 5th level is similar to the 2nd one in terms of just getting to point A to point B and making it to the mines and rescue more of Dan's followers. Wait, weren't we just in the mines? Anyways, going through this level, you get to see some of the worms' camps, and again, I really do like the design choice. If I'm being quite honest, there really isn't much to say about this level, except it's better than 1 and 4, which really isn't a high bar to set, and you do get ambushed in the safe room once again. Then we get to level 6, the finale, the final mission, the conclusion to this brand new act added into Back 4 Blood. What is it? What do you get to do? Well, you get to rescue the followers in the mines, blow the mines up with dynamite, get into a truck, and drive out of the tunnels right before the explosion engulfs the truck in flames, and that's the DLC. Seriously, that's it. There's no huge battle, there's no raid boss, absolutely nothing. Just Philip saying, we're only getting started. I'm guessing this means this whole story arc isn't over, but this was such an anticlimactic way to end this act. These were the first levels that were implemented into the game after Back 4 Blood released, and this is how it ends. Like, it could have been so much better. Again, they're probably saving it for future releases, but with it being the first act that they drop after the game was already released, this was such a disappointment. Overall, this act was an up and down roller coaster with really good highs and some god-awful lows. I will say it was better than what I was expecting, but some of the levels could have been designed a lot better gameplay-wise, and Turtle Rock, please do not make another escort mission for the love of Christ. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the new cleaner, Prophet Dan. I thought I was the only prophet, but I guess that's just not the case. Dan has the ability to become enhanced for a short duration after he revives a teammate or if he gets revived. The effects can vary from some minor damage resistance to dropping a bundle of flashbangs. Because why not? The team gets 3 damage resistance and immunity to knockback while reviving, which that knockback immunity is pretty solid. An ogre can flail their arms around and Dan just takes it like a man. Personally, Dan is my new favorite cleaner added to the game, and it's solely because of his accent and his voice lines. Like, I don't know, there's something about the Irish accent, it gets to me. I don't know what it is. I like a good old Irish accent. Also, I really like the details on his jacket, including a stitch of the Irish flag. There's also a 4-leaf clover, as well as Peter 4:12 written on his jacket, and it reads, "Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you." I don't know what that means. So now let's get into the new weapons, starting with the Bear Trap, which is a new quick slot deployable, and I am so 50-50 about this thing. In terms of using it yourself, it's either very, very situational or it is completely useless. You basically lay it down, you get to use it once on a special infected, which I will say when that happens, it is pretty hilarious. They become a free target. And also there's a chance that you could reuse it, and I believe the reuse chance goes up when you upgrade your quick slot deployables through the shop. So I believe it gets higher, but I will admit I didn't do my research on that. But what makes the bear traps so bad, it's not even the fact like when you use it, it's the fact that enemies now have bear traps. And I cannot even count how many times I got trapped by a bear trap, and it is frustrating. And here's the thing. Let me show you this picture here. All right, one of these bear traps is mine. One of them is the enemies. Just looking at it for a split second, can you even like see which one is the enemies? If you chose the one on the right, sorry, you're freaking wrong. The way that the game deciphers which one is yours and which one is the enemies are these very faint white marks on the traps. Like there could have been a bit more variety and a bit more of a difference between them. And it's not like I use bear traps exclusively, so if I just see a bear trap, I assume that it's the enemies. But still, I cannot count how many times I've got trapped in some. Sometimes I completely walk over one and it doesn't trap, while other times there are some that I swear to God is underneath the ground and I still get trapped by it. Yeah, bear traps, they're incredibly annoying. The next weapon we have is the bait jar, and I know what some of you are thinking. Gary, isn't this the same throwable that's in Left 4 Dead? No, they're completely different. There's no similarities between the two. These are two completely different things. The purpose of the bait jar is to throw it, attract some ridden for some time, but if you throw it on the ground, it is completely useless. Like, they look at it for a split second and then they just go back to you. However, what really makes these jars effective is when you throw it at special infected. And yes, this does work on ogres, and it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It is just so freaking hilarious. God, son of a freaking bear trap, man. And yes, the bait jars can kill birds. The new melee weapon added is the meat claws. They are pretty fun to use. They do have a bleeding effect, but if you're looking for a melee weapon to do on higher difficulties, you should probably just stick with the bat or the fire axe, because they have one-tap potential, or they just do the job a lot better. The bow is also a really fun addition to the game, but again, it suffers the same problems as the meat claw. You know, you could use it, but you just have so many better options. The fire rate for the left click is incredibly slow, so if you're being surrounded by ridden, it's not going to really do the job. And even if you right click and hold and shoot it at a special infected, you could do a lot more damage with any of the sniper rifles in the game. But what I will say about the bow and what I really like about it is that it is a secondary and it uses stamina and not ammo. So if you have some stamina cards in your deck, then you can pretty much just spam this all you want. The last weapon we'll talk about is the smoke grenade. This makes everyone in it look like they're having an existential crisis. The flashbangs, in my opinion, are just better in general. And no, the smoke grenades do not work on birds. With the release of the DLC, we also got new enemies. And no, I'm not talking about new variations of pre-existing enemies like we got in Tunnels of Terror. I realized now that I didn't actually talk about those enemies in Tunnels of Terror because to me they were just so irrelevant. They were not that unique in any ways, so I didn't think it was even worthy of bringing it up. However, bringing these enemies up is quite worth it because they are actually new enemies. The first one is the crones, and these guys have bows with fire arrows that does burning damage when they hit. They are incredibly weak, easy to kill, and it's very easy to dodge them because 9 times out of 10 they can't even hit their shots. Slashers are these giant dudes with the meat claws that deal bleed damage. These guys are very predictable and very easy to dodge. However, they are a bit tougher. They will take a few more rounds than the crones. They're really not much of a challenge, especially if you keep your distance from them. Pusslingers throw bait jars that can trigger hordes if you get hit by them. These guys are incredibly annoying, but they are also pretty easy to kill. The snipers, they deal a good amount of damage. They are stationary, and there is a huge red or green laser, depending on what corruption cards you got, that indicates their location, and it makes me regret bringing a deck with mag coupler because that disables your aim down sights. If I'm being honest, I think these new enemies are pretty fun to fight. However, I do think there's a big problem with this, and that is because there's so many special infected now in the game, it kind of feels like the game is kind of going back to the way it was before, where they're just constantly throwing specials at you that are very tanky, and it just reminds me of the old Back 4 Blood days that I genuinely hated. So having to deal with like 10 plus different types of special infected, it could definitely be overwhelming, especially on higher difficulties. Next, we'll talk about the new cards, and I'm not going to actually talk about the cards themselves. However, what I will talk about is how these new cards are obtained. And if you're thinking you just get them through the supply lines, that is not how you get them. The only way you can get these new cards and these new emblems and, you know, all that stuff is you have to find a duffel bag that is somewhere in the map, and you have to take it to the safe room at the end of the level to redeem it. There are two problems with this. First off, these duffel bags are exclusive to Act 5. You will not find them in Act 1, 2, 3. They are only exclusive to Act 5. And on top of all that, it replaces your quick inventory slot. So if you have toolkits, if you have defibs, if you have barbed wire, you have to basically sacrifice that just for this duffel bag. I think adding this duffel bag was really unnecessary, and it was more tedious than enjoyable. And on top of that, they're only exclusive in Act 5, so if you want to get the new cards, you have to only play through this act. You can't play through any of the other ones. Like, the new enemies can be in the previous acts, so why can't the duffel bags? The outfits are all based on what the cleaners were like before the collapse, and I gotta say they're pretty good. I do like Holly's. Carly's just looks great. Mom's made her promote from a gilf to a milf. Doc's rock phase outfit I think is freaking amazing. And Hang's outfit is just completely unexpected, but it's also fantastic. These outfits are great, and as long as you have the DLC, you just get them right away. You don't have to do the duffel bags. You don't have to do the supply lines. You can just get them by buying the DLC. So, in conclusion, what are my final thoughts on Children of the Worm? And do I think this DLC is putting Back 4 Blood in the right direction? You know, I hate getting to this part of the video because honestly, it's just a 50-50 thing, because there are good things here, but at the same time, we have to consider that the DLC is $15. And I know a good amount of people didn't get the annual pass because they didn't like the game before the annual pass or before the new content was dropped. And do I think that this DLC alone is going to get people not only invested into the game, but also maybe returning players to come back and play once again? Honestly, no. I think this DLC is good for those who are already playing the game and they already enjoy it, but the amount of content that we get from this is not enough to bring new players in or to bring returning players who gave up on the game or they just got burnt out from it. Also, that duffel bag grinding does not help in the slightest. I will say the new weapons are neat, but they're not anything that's going to replace what people already use. The enemies are pretty fun to fight, but again, it kind of just brings us back to the whole special infected problem that Turtle Rock claimed to have fixed, but it just seems like it's trickling back to the way it was before. So if you've played Back 4 Blood and you enjoy the game and you want to have more content, I'd say give it a shot. But if you're someone who hasn't played the game yet, or if you're a player that left the game and you don't know if this DLC is worth it, I would say just hold off. Again, I think the act itself is very up and down with some very fun moments, but the lows really, really hurt my overall feelings about the DLC. But it was still better than Tunnels of Terror, so I gotta give it credit for that. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude my thoughts on Children of the Worm. Thank you all so much for watching, and without further ado, I will see you in the next one. Later.